Hey everyone, before we dive into tonight's journey, grab a warm blanket, dim those lights, and maybe turn on a soft fan for that perfect background hum. Drop your city and current time in the comments. I love seeing where you're watching from. Now, let's step back into a world where the stars literally decided if you lived or died. You wake up in 1347 and your doctor refuses to treat you. Not because you can't pay, not because he's busy, but because Mars is sitting in the wrong house and bleeding you today would kill you faster than the plague outside your door. This isn't superstition. This is science. Medieval science. Your fingers trace the rough wooden edge of your bed as morning light filters through oiled cloth windows. The air tastes like smoke and fear, that metallic tang that settles on your tongue when death walks through your neighbourhood. And it has been walking. A lot. But here's what modern people don't understand. Medieval folks weren't stupid. They were terrified. And when you're terrified, you grab onto anything that promises control. For them, that control came written in the stars. The monastery bells ring 6 times. Dawn prayers. But Brother Matthias isn't praying. He's hunched over a massive chart that looks like someone threw numbers and symbols at parchment and called it medicine. This is your chart, your personal death map. Listen to the scratch of his quill on parchment. Smell the beeswax candles burning low. Feel how the morning air still carries winter's bite, even though it's supposed to be spring. The monk looks up at you with eyes that have seen too much. The moon walks through Aries today, he says, voice calm as someone reading a recipe. We cannot touch your head. To cut there now would open a door your soul might walk through. You want to laugh. Your head pounds like someone's hammering iron inside your skull, but you don't laugh. Because 3 houses down, old Henrik did laugh at this exact warning. They buried what was left of him yesterday. Here's the twisted truth that would break your modern brain. This system actually worked sometimes. Not because the stars gave a damn about your fever, but because forcing medieval people to wait often let their bodies heal naturally. No bloodletting during the wrong moon phase. Congratulations, you just avoided medieval medicine's favourite way to accidentally kill patients. The monk traces a symbol on your chart that looks like a sideways M with a tail. Mars sits in the 7th house today, he whispers. Death's house. We wait. But you can't wait. Your brother started coughing blood this morning. The Black Death doesn't care about Mars or moons or monks with their fancy charts. It just eats. So you lie there staring at ceiling beams that look like the ribs of some dead giant, wondering if the stars really do control everything, or if desperate people just need something bigger than themselves to blame when everything goes wrong. The candle flickers. Brother Matthias rolls up your chart and tucks it into his robes like he's hiding evidence. Outside, someone starts screaming. The sound cuts through stone walls thick enough to stop arrows. Tomorrow, the monk says, not looking at you. If God wills it, the stars will be kinder tomorrow. But tomorrow feels like a promise no one intends to keep. Wait until you hear what happens when a king tries to cheat his own death chart. 3 months later, you're standing in the shadows of the royal court, watching the most powerful man in England argue with an astrologer about his own death. King Edward III sits on a throne that cost more than your village sees in 10 years. Gold threads catch torchlight, throwing star patterns across stone walls. But all that wealth can't change what's written in his personal chart. You're telling me I can't ride to battle because of... what? A planet? The king's voice bounces off cathedral ceilings, sharp enough to cut glass. Court astrologer William de Merle doesn't flinch. He's used to powerful men who think money can buy their way out of cosmic law. Sire, Mars opposes Saturn in your natal chart this month. To wage war now invites catastrophe. You smell the fierce sweat of courtiers who dare not speak. Taste the metallic tension that fills rooms before someone dies. Feel how the thick tapestries seem to press closer, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. Here's what's insane about medieval astrology. It wasn't just about individual people. Entire kingdoms rose and fell based on star charts. Battles were fought or postponed because some planet wandered into the wrong neighbourhood. The king stands, and his armour clanks like chains. Show me this death chart, then. William spreads a scroll across a table made from wood older than Christ. The chart looks like a clock designed by someone having a fever dream. Circles within circles, strange symbols, lines connecting nothing to everything. See here, Majesty. William's finger traces a path between symbols that look like ancient graffiti. The comet that appeared last month sits in your 8th house, the house of death and transformation. You leaned forward, squinting at markings that seemed to shift in the flickering light. Medieval astrology charts weren't just pretty pictures. They were battle plans, military strategies, government policy written in star speak. The king laughs, but it sounds hollow as a skull. My grandfather conquered Scotland when 3 comets blazed overhead. Comets are good luck, you fool. Your grandfather, William says quietly, died 6 months later. The silence hits like a physical blow. Courtiers suddenly discover fascinating details in their fingernails. Guards examine their sword hilts with scholarly intensity. But here's the kicker that would blow modern minds. These astrologers were often right, not because they could read the future in star patterns, but because they understood human psychology better than a modern therapist. Tell a king he's doomed if he goes to war, and he might hesitate just long enough to scout properly. Delay a battle by a month, and winter weather might do what enemy arrows couldn't. Force someone to think about consequences, and sometimes they make better choices. The king stares at his death chart like it's written in blood. What if I don't go to war? What if I stay here, safe in my castle? William's smile is sharp as a winter wind. The chart shows danger from conflict, sire. It doesn't specify which conflict. And that's when you realise the genius of medieval astrology. It wasn't fortune-telling. It was problem-solving dressed up as magic. Give people just enough information to worry, but never enough to feel safe. Keep them thinking. Keep them careful. The king rolls up his death chart and hands it back. Double the guards, he orders. If the stars want me dead, they'll have to work for it. 3 days later, a kitchen fire nearly burns down the castle. The king wasn't killed by enemy swords or battle wounds. He almost died from smoke inhalation, safe in his own home. The stars apparently have a sense of irony. But what happened when ordinary people got their hands on these death charts? The answer involves a village revolt and Europe's strangest folk ritual. You're standing in the muddy centre of Little Wickham village, watching a farmer argue with his wife about whether to plant wheat based on Jupiter's position. This is your life now. Medieval Yelp reviews, but for planets. Thomas the Miller waves a stained piece of parchment like it's the Holy Grail. The almanac says plant when the moon's in Taurus. Taurus, that's next week, woman. His wife Mary crosses her arms and gives him the look that has ended wars and started new ones. The almanac said old Berta would live to see another harvest. She's been dead 3 months. You breathe in the smell of pig slop and desperation. Taste the wood smoke that never quite leaves the air. Feel how the spring mud squelches between your toes, cold and thick as porridge. This is where medieval astrology got really weird. It wasn't just for kings and monks anymore. Some genius figured out how to mass-produce simplified star charts for common people. Think cosmic fortune cookies, but with actual consequences. Thomas unfolds his almanac, a cheap printed sheet covered in symbols that look like a drunk chicken walked across wet ink. See here? Moon in Taurus means good crops. Mars in Leo means watch for thieves. Saturn in Cancer means don't trust the blacksmith. What's Saturn got against Tom the blacksmith? Mary demands. Chart doesn't say, just says don't trust him. And here's the part that would make your head spin. People actually lived by this stuff. Village decisions got made based on planetary positions. Marriages were delayed. Business deals fell through. People moved houses because some ancient planet was having a bad day. You watch as more villagers gather around Thomas and his magical mud-stained paper. Everyone wants to know what the stars say about their lives. Because when you're one bad harvest away from starvation, you'll take advice from anywhere, even imaginary patterns in the night sky. What's it say about the plague? Someone calls out. Thomas squints at symbols that could mean anything. Says, Mercury opposes Mars in the house of illness. Danger comes from the east. Everyone turns to stare east, where the road leads to London, where the Black Death started its march through England, eating towns like a hungry beast. Here's what modern people miss about medieval astrology. It wasn't really about predicting the future. It was about giving powerless people the illusion of control. When everything in your life depends on weather, disease, war, and the mood of nobles who see you as talking livestock, you need something bigger to believe in. The village priest shows up, looking like someone who's been chewing nettles. "This is blasphemy," he announces. "Only God knows the future." Thomas waves his almanac. "This is God's will, written in the stars he created." The priest's eye starts twitching. This is the eternal medieval battle. Church authority versus star authority. And honestly, the stars were winning. Mary steps between them like someone breaking up a tavern brawl. "Father Benedict, the chart says we should double-check the church roof. Something about wood and water and transformation?" The priest opens his mouth to argue, then stops. Because last week spring rain leaked through rotting beams and ruined the altar cloth. Maybe the stars do know something. That evening, you sit around a fire that throws dancing shadows on cottage walls, listening to Thomas read star predictions for the next month. His voice carries the authority of someone who actually believes what he's saying. Moon enters Gemini on St. Crispin's Day. Good for travel, bad for promises. Jupiter trines with Venus during wheat planting. Expect abundance, but watch for luxury that corrupts the soul. The words wash over you like a lullaby made of cosmic nonsense and desperate hope. Outside, wolves howl in the dark forest. Inside, people plan their lives around the imaginary moods of planets they've never seen. Medieval astrology wasn't science, but it was something else, something deeper. It was the belief that ordinary people mattered enough for the universe to pay attention to their daily struggles. Even if it was all made up, it felt better than believing they were alone. But the real question is, how did medieval doctors decide who lived and who died based on these star charts? What you're about to learn will disturb you. You're lying on a wooden table that smells like dried blood and crushed herbs, watching Dr. Aldrich stare at your horoscope like it contains the secret to eternal life. It doesn't. It contains the secret to your death, and he's trying to figure out how to delay it. "Mercury is retrograde in your 3rd house," he mutters, tracing symbols with a finger stained purple from grinding medicines. "This governs the shoulders and arms. We cannot bleed you there." Your arm throbs where something, maybe a sword, maybe farm work, maybe just medieval life, has left a wound that weeps yellow pus and screams when you move it. But Mercury, a chunk of rock floating in space, apparently has opinions about your medical treatment. The doctor's workshop surrounds you like a museum of nightmares. Glass bottles filled with things that shouldn't exist in nature. Dried herbs hanging from ceiling beams like the corpses of tiny green people. And charts. So many charts. Star maps covering every available surface, turning the room into a paper sky. Listen to the clink of metal instruments being arranged on wooden trays. Smell the vinegar they use to purify everything, mixing with smoke from herbs that might be medicine or might be someone's idea of a joke. Feel how the table's rough wood presses against your spine, worn smooth by other patients who may or may not have survived their consultations. Dr. Aldrich picks up what looks like a compass, designed by someone having religious visions. Your natal chart shows Moon in Scorpio. This makes you prone to infections, but also gives you unusual healing power. We work with this, not against it. Here's what would blow your modern brain. Medieval doctors actually believed different body parts were controlled by different planets. Not just influenced by, controlled by, like cosmic puppets with flesh strings. The doctor points to a diagram on the wall showing a naked human figure covered in astrological symbols. The head belongs to Aries, the neck to Taurus, the arms to Gemini. It's like someone played cosmic pin the tail on the donkey with human anatomy. Your injury falls under Mercury's domain, he explains, preparing instruments that look more suitable for carpentry than medicine. But Mercury is retrograde, moving backward through the heavens. To cut now would make your condition worsen, not improve. You want to argue. Your arm feels like it's being eaten from the inside, but 3 patients before you ignored similar warnings. 2 of them died. 1 lost the arm entirely. The stars apparently keep score. The doctor mixes something in a clay bowl. Crushed pearls, expensive, ground unicorn horn, fake, and mercury, actual poison, while consulting yet another chart covered in wheels within wheels. We will treat you with sympathetic magic instead. What affects Mercury in the heavens will affect the mercurial humours in your body. This is medieval medicine in all its terrifying glory. Part science, part superstition, part desperate improvisation. They didn't understand germs or infection or why people died from simple cuts. But they noticed patterns. Sometimes people got better when treated on certain days. Sometimes they got worse. So they built an entire medical system around cosmic timing. The doctor applies his mercury-filled paste to your wound, while muttering what sounds like prayers to planetary deities. The mixture burns like liquid fire, but in a way that promises healing rather than harm. We wait 3 days, he announces, until Mercury stations direct and begins forward motion again. Then we reassess. You lie there, staring at ceiling beams carved with protective symbols, wondering if the universe really does care about your infected arm, or if desperate people just need to believe someone, even distant planets, gives a damn about their suffering. 3 days later, your wound has started to close, not because Mercury changed directions, but because the doctor's mixture, despite containing actual poison, also contained ingredients with genuine antiseptic properties. Medieval medicine was weird, but it wasn't always wrong. The doctor nods sagely as he examines your healing arm. Mercury smiles upon you. The retrograde period strengthened rather than weakened your natural healing powers. You don't argue. In a world where infection kills more people than war, you'll take medical advice from planets, priests, or anyone else who seems to know something you don't. The stars might be silent, but sometimes silence is exactly what desperate people need to hear. But here's where things get really dark. What happened when medieval astrologers tried to predict exactly when someone would die? The answer involves Europe's most disturbing funeral tradition. You're standing beside a deathbed in 1349, watching an astrologer calculate the exact hour someone will stop breathing. It's not magic, it's mathematics. Medieval mathematics applied to the most terrifying question humans can ask: when will I die? Master Jean de Bruges adjusts his astrolabe, a brass instrument that looks like a clock made by someone obsessed with circles. The dying woman on the bed can't see what he's doing, which is probably a mercy, because he's not trying to save her, he's trying to time her death. The moon approaches conjunction with Saturn in her 8th house, he whispers to the woman's son, who clutches a leather purse full of coins like it might resurrect his mother. I calculate. 4 hours past midnight. Maybe 5. The room smells like approaching death, that sweet sick scent of a body beginning its final surrender. You taste the metallic fear sweat of family members who've gathered to watch someone they love slip away. Feel how the rushes on the floor have been dampened with vinegar and herbs, a futile attempt to keep death at bay with pleasant smells. Here's what would break your modern mind. Medieval astrologers could predict death with disturbing accuracy. Not because they could read fate in star patterns, but because they understood something we've forgotten: the rhythm of dying. Master Jean spreads the woman's natal chart across a table, worn smooth by similar calculations. The parchment shows circles within circles, symbols that look like alphabet soup having an identity crisis, but to him, it's a clock, a cosmic clock counting down to 0. See here, he explains to the son, pointing to intersecting lines that mean nothing to you but everything to him. Her life force, the sun in her chart, receives harsh aspects from Mars and Saturn simultaneously. The body cannot sustain this cosmic pressure. The dying woman moans softly, lost in whatever dreams or nightmares fill the space between life and whatever comes after. Her breathing has that irregular rhythm that means the body is forgetting how to stay alive. Master Jean doesn't look at her. He looks at his instruments, his charts, his mathematical proof that death operates on a schedule. When the moon completes its transit through her 8th house, the silver cord will be severed. This is medieval astrology at its most disturbing and most practical. Families needed to know when death would arrive, not for mystical reasons, for practical ones. When to call the priest for last rites, when to gather relatives for final goodbyes, when to prepare the body and arrange the funeral. The astrologer consults a table of planetary motions that looks like someone turned mathematics into religious text. Numbers and symbols march across parchment in neat rows, each calculation bringing him closer to the exact moment when one human story ends. Your mother's chart shows she will pass peacefully, he tells the son. No struggle. Saturn brings hardship, but also dignity and death. She will simply stop. You watch the sun's face crumple like old parchment. He's paying good money to learn exactly when he'll become an orphan. There's something both terrifying and oddly comforting about such precision applied to chaos. Master Gene packs his instruments with the efficiency of someone who's done this too many times. Astrolabe into leather case, charts rolled and tied, tables of calculations tucked into a satchel that's seen more deathbeds than most priests. I will return before midnight to observe the final transit, he promises, for accuracy and future calculations. The sun nods numbly. Outside, church bells ring the hour. Inside, a woman dies exactly when the stars said she would, not because planets control human fate, but because experienced astrologers learned to read the signs of approaching death and wrapped their observations in cosmic authority. 4 hours and 23 minutes past midnight, she stops breathing. Master Gene makes a note in his ledger. Saturn conjunction Moon, 8th house transit. Calculation accurate within 23 minutes. Adjust future death charts accordingly. Medieval people didn't just believe in astrology. They turned it into a science of endings, a mathematics of mortality. A way to bring order to the most disordered experience humans face. Even if the stars don't really control when we die, sometimes it helps to believe someone, anyone, is keeping track. But the most shocking part? What medieval people did when they thought the stars predicted their own death. The rituals they performed will make your skin crawl. You're staring at your own death chart, and according to the astrologer who just finished calculating it, you have 6 days to live. Not approximately 6 days. Exactly 6 days, 4 hours and 12 minutes. The stars have apparently marked your personal expiration date. Brother Thomas of Glastonbury sets down his quill with the solemnity of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis, which, in medieval terms, he just did. Mars enters your 12th house on the Feast of St. Bartholomew, the house of hidden enemies and self-undoing. I'm sorry. The monastery scriptorium falls silent except for the scratch of other monks copying manuscripts and the soft whisper of turning pages, but you can feel their attention like heat from a fire. Everyone wants to know what it's like to receive a cosmic death sentence. Your hands shake as you examine the chart. Circles within circles, symbols that look like someone spilled alphabet soup and called it prophecy. But there's your life, mapped out in mathematical precision, ending in exactly 148 hours and 12 minutes. Smell the beeswax candles that burn without end in this holy place. Taste the ink and parchment dust that fills the air like intellectual perfume. Feel how the stone floors press cold against your knees as you lean forward to study your own ending. Is there? You start, then stop. In the medieval world, asking if you can cheat death isn't just desperate, it's heretical. But desperation makes people brave or stupid, and right now you can't tell the difference. Brother Thomas shakes his head before you finish the question. The stars do not lie, child, but... He glances around to make sure the other monks aren't listening. There are preparations one might make. Here's what would blow your modern mind. Medieval people developed elaborate rituals for when they received their own death charts. Not to prevent death, that would be arguing with God's will, but to ensure their death had meaning, dignity, and cosmic approval. The monk produces a second scroll from beneath his robes, the Ars Moriendi, the art of dying well. If the stars have marked your time, we can at least ensure you meet that time with grace. The manuscript shows woodcut illustrations of people dying surrounded by angels and demons, engaged in final spiritual battles for their immortal souls. It looks like medieval comic books about death, complete with speech bubbles in Latin. First, Brother Thomas explains, you must make peace with all earthly debts and grievances. Mars in the 12th house suggests your death may come from hidden enemies, possibly people you've wronged who seek revenge. You think about old Henrik, who still hasn't forgiven you for that boundary dispute over the pig pen. Maybe Henrik's anger has literally cosmic consequences. Maybe the stars are just good record keepers of human grudges. Second, you fast for 3 days to purify your body for its transition. Third, you give away all possessions except what you need for burial. Fourth, ... He trails off, looking uncomfortable. Fourth, what? You dig your own grave. The words hit like a physical blow. Dig your own grave, not as punishment, as spiritual preparation, as a way to meditate on mortality while you still have time to make peace with it. Brother Thomas continues reading from the Death Preparation Manual. The act of grave-digging forces contemplation of earthly vanity. Standing in your own future resting place reminds the soul that all worldly concerns are temporary shadows. That evening you walk to the village cemetery carrying a shovel that feels heavier with each step. The sun sets through autumn clouds, painting everything the colour of old blood. Other villagers watch from their doorways but don't speak. Everyone knows what it means when someone starts digging in the churchyard. The earth is harder than you expected. Clay mixed with stones, roots of ancient yews, probably bones from graves dug and forgotten centuries ago. Each shovelful reminds you that countless other people have faced this same moment, the knowledge of approaching death, the strange peace that comes with certainty. By midnight, you're standing waist-deep in your own future grave, staring up at stars that allegedly control human fate. The constellations look the same as they did when you thought you had decades left to live. Indifferent, beautiful, eternal. You climb out of the hole and head home, leaving the shovel beside a mound of fresh earth that smells like endings and beginnings mixed together. 6 days later, you're still alive. Not because the astrologer was wrong, but because knowing exactly when you might die forced you to live more intentionally in the time you had left. You made peace with Henrik, gave your spare coins to the church, spent hours talking with family members instead of brooding alone. The stars didn't predict your death. They predicted what would happen if you kept living the way you'd been living. And when you changed how you lived, apparently the cosmic calculations changed too. Medieval astrology wasn't fortune-telling. It was therapy disguised as mathematics, a way to force people to confront their mortality and make better choices while they still could. Even if the stars don't control human fate, sometimes believing they do makes people more human. But what happened when entire kingdoms started making decisions based on star charts? The answer involves a war that never happened and Europe's strangest military strategy. You're standing in the command tent of King Philip VI of France, watching the most powerful military force in medieval Europe refuse to fight because Jupiter is having a bad relationship with Mars. This isn't cowardice. This is strategic astrology applied to international warfare. Court astrologer Guillaume de Machaut spreads a chart across the war table like he's planning a siege against the heavens themselves. The parchment shows planetary positions that look like someone threw geometry at mythology and called it military intelligence. Majesty, Guillaume says with the authority of someone who's never held a sword but claims to understand cosmic warfare. Mars opposes Jupiter in the House of Open Enemies. To engage the English now would be catastrophic. King Philip stares at the battle plans that have consumed months of preparation. 40,000 French knights, the finest military force in Christendom, ready to crush the English invasion. But the planets apparently have other ideas. The tent smells like leather and horse sweat and the metallic tang of weapons waiting to taste blood. You can hear armour clanking as knights pace outside, eager for battle that may never come. Feel how the autumn wind presses against canvas walls, making the whole structure shudder like it's afraid of what might be decided here. Explain this opposition, the king demands, in simple terms that a soldier can understand. Guillaume points to symbols that mean nothing to you but everything to him. Mars governs war and conflict. Jupiter governs expansion and fortune. When they oppose each other, Mars's aggression is cancelled by Jupiter's wisdom. The planets counsel patience over action. This is medieval warfare at its most surreal. Kings commanding armies based on planetary positions. Battle strategies determined by celestial geometry. The fate of nations hanging on whether some distant rock was having a good day or bad day in space. A messenger bursts into the tent, mud-splattered and exhausted from hard riding. Sire, English scouts report King Edward's forces are forming battle lines 3 leagues south. They expect engagement at dawn. The French king looks at his astrologer, then at his military commanders, then at the chart covered in cosmic mathematics that claims to hold the secret of victory or defeat. What if we ignore the stars? King Philip asks quietly. What if we fight anyway? Guillaume's face goes pale as a monastery parchment. Majesty, To fight against cosmic will is to invite divine punishment. The last king who ignored such warnings. Yes, died 3 days after his victory, choking on wine at his own celebration feast. Here's what would break your modern brain. Medieval military astrology worked, not because planets controlled battle outcomes, but because forcing kings to hesitate before major decisions often prevented disasters that overconfident commanders would have charged into blindly. King Philip studies the battlefield maps one more time, then slowly rolls them up. Send word to the English. We require more time to position our forces properly. Engagement is postponed indefinitely. The messenger looks confused. The commanders look confused. Only Guillaume nods approvingly, like the universe just whispered its approval in his ear. 3 days later, a massive storm system moves through the region. Rain turns the battlefield into a swamp that would have trapped heavy cavalry and made organised combat impossible. The English, caught unprepared for weather delay, lose half their supplies to flooding and retreat to more defensible positions. King Philip's decision to wait, supposedly because Mars opposed Jupiter, actually gave him overwhelming strategic advantage when fighting finally resumed weeks later on ground and timing of his choosing. That evening, you sit around a campfire listening to soldiers debate whether the king was brilliant or cowardly, whether trusting star charts shows wisdom or weakness, whether Guillaume de Machaut is a genius or an elaborate fraud. I don't care if he reads fortunes in sheep entrails, mutters Sir Geoffrey, sharpening a sword that gleams like liquid starlight. As long as we win battles and go home with our heads still attached to our necks. The fire pops, sending sparks towards stars that may or may not control human destiny. Somewhere in the darkness, English scouts probe French positions. Somewhere else, astrologers on both sides calculate cosmic advantages and disadvantages using mathematics that turns warfare into a chess game played between planets. Medieval military astrology wasn't mysticism. It was strategy disguised as divination, a way to give commanders permission to make unpopular decisions like strategic retreat or delayed engagement. When you need to justify tactical patience to hot-headed knights eager for glory, it helps to blame the planets. The stars didn't prevent that war. Smart kings prevented that war and used star charts to make their caution look like cosmic wisdom instead of political calculation. Even if astrology was fake, sometimes fake wisdom led to real victories. But the strangest part of medieval star obsession, what happened when common people got hold of detailed death predictions? The answer involves Europe's most disturbing folk tradition. You're standing in the town square of Brightwood Village, watching the most disturbing lottery in human history. Except instead of winning money, people are winning death dates, and they're paying for the privilege. Master Geoffrey the travelling astrologer has set up shop beneath the old oak tree, surrounded by charts, instruments, and a growing crowd of people who want to know exactly when they're going to die. For the low price of 3 silver coins, a month's wages for most villagers, he'll calculate your personal expiration date with mathematical precision. Step forward, Geoffrey calls out like he's selling fresh bread instead of mortality predictions. Know thy fate. Prepare thy soul. The stars reveal all to those brave enough to ask. The morning smells like wood smoke and wet earth, and the kind of desperate curiosity that makes people do things they'll regret later. You taste the metallic excitement of a crowd gathered to watch something they know they shouldn't. Feel how the autumn mud squelches beneath feet that can't decide whether to step forward or run away. Young Thomas the baker pushes through the crowd, clutching silver coins that represent his entire savings. I want to know, he announces with the bravery of someone who hasn't thought this through. I want to know when I die. Master Geoffrey spreads his instruments with the showmanship of someone who's performed this ritual in dozens of villages across Europe. Astrolabe, ephemeris tables, natal charts, calculation wheels, an entire mathematics of mortality laid out on rough wooden planks. Date and hour of thy birth? Geoffrey asks, already sketching circles on fresh parchment. September 15th, in the year of our Lord 1327, just after dawn prayers, Thomas replies, voice steady despite hands that shake like autumn leaves. Here's what would horrify your modern sensibilities. Medieval people actually wanted to know their death dates, not just important people like kings or nobles. Common villagers saved money for months to pay travelling astrologers for personal death calculations. Geoffrey's hands move with practiced efficiency, consulting tables of planetary positions and scribbling calculations that look like someone turned mathematics into mystical poetry. "The moon was in Scorpio when thou were born," he mutters, "Mars rising in the 10th house. Saturn conjuncts thy natal sun in..." He stops calculating and goes very quiet. The crowd leans forward. Thomas's face drains of colour. Even you feel your stomach clench with second-hand dread. "What?" Thomas whispers. "What does Saturn conjunct my natal sun mean?" Geoffrey looks up from his calculations like someone who's just discovered something he'd rather not know. "It means, thy death comes not from age or illness, but from thy own hand. Self-destruction brought by despair that seems to have no earthly cause." The words hit Thomas like a physical blow. He staggers backward, silver coins falling from nerveless fingers to bounce off wet coblones. This is the dark side of medieval astrology. Not just predicting when people would die, but how. And sometimes the predictions became self-fulfilling prophecies that turned cosmic mathematics into psychological torture. "Can it be changed?" Thomas asks desperately. "Can I avoid this fate?" Geoffrey shakes his head with what might be genuine sympathy. "The stars do not lie, boy, but knowing thy fate allows thee to prepare thy soul for its proper transition." Thomas stumbles away from the astrologer's table, leaving his coins in the mud. The crowd parts to let him pass, avoiding eye contact like his doom might be contagious. But here's the twisted part. 3 other villagers immediately step forward with their own silver coins and their own desperate need to know when death will come for them. Medieval death prediction wasn't just individual trauma, it was community entertainment. Villages would gather to watch neighbours receive cosmic death sentences the way modern people gather to watch reality TV, part horror, part fascination, part gratitude that someone else was receiving bad news instead of you. By evening, Geoffrey has calculated death dates for 12 villagers. 2 will die of illness within the year, 1 will perish in an accident involving horses, 3 will live to old age but suffer lingering deaths from lung sickness, and young Thomas will die by his own hand before his 30th birthday. That night, you sit in the village tavern listening to people debate whether Geoffrey is a prophet or a charlatan, whether knowing your death date brings peace or torment, whether the stars really control human fate, or if desperate people just need something bigger than themselves to blame when life becomes unbearable. "I think he's wrong about Thomas," says Martha the Weaver, nursing ale that tastes like liquid bread. "That boy has too much to live for. A new wife, plans for expanding his bakery, dreams of travelling to London." But old Henrik shakes his head grimly. Despair comes from inside, not outside. Sometimes having everything to live for makes it worse when the darkness creeps in. 2 months later, Thomas hangs himself from the beam in his bakery. No one knows why. His business was thriving. His wife was pregnant with their first child. He had every reason to be happy, except he knew exactly when and how he was going to die. And sometimes knowledge becomes fate simply because people believe it will. Medieval astrology wasn't just fortune-telling. It was psychological warfare disguised as cosmic wisdom, a way to give people's deepest fears mathematical authority and theological justification. The stars don't control when we die, but sometimes believing they do becomes the very thing that kills us. After 8 months of living with medieval astrology, what did I learn about why these people trusted planets more than priests? The answer will change how you see both past and present. Conclusion: why the stars still win. You're standing in a modern city, surrounded by technology the medieval world couldn't imagine, and yet, people still check their horoscopes every morning, still make decisions based on Mercury retrograde warnings, still blame planetary positions when their lives go sideways. How is that possible? How does a medieval system of cosmic nonsense survive in an age of smartphones and space travel? Because medieval astrology was never really about the stars. Listen to the hum of traffic that sounds like the ocean of human activity, endless and overwhelming. Smell the exhaust and coffee and 1,000 personal dramas mixing in the morning air. Feel how the sidewalk vibrates under your feet, with the footsteps of people rushing toward futures they can't predict or control. It's 2024 and you're just as lost as that medieval peasant standing in a muddy village square, wondering if the universe gives a damn about your personal struggles. Medieval people didn't trust astrology because they were stupid. They trusted it because they were human. And humans, whether living in 1347 or 2024, need to believe that their individual lives matter enough for someone, anyone, even distant planets, to pay attention. The medieval astrologer calculating death dates wasn't offering mystical wisdom. He was offering psychological comfort, the illusion that chaos has patterns, that suffering has meaning, that someone, somewhere, is keeping track of our personal stories. Modern therapy does exactly the same thing, just without the cosmic window dressing. You pull out your phone and check your horoscope app, because of course you have one, everyone does, and read that Mercury is retrograde and you should avoid making important decisions today. It's the same advice medieval people got from their almanacs, the same cosmic excuse for being cautious when the world feels too complicated to navigate safely. The stars haven't changed in 700 years. Human psychology hasn't changed either. Medieval astrology thrived because it gave people three things they desperately needed: a sense of control over uncontrollable circumstances, cosmic justification for their fears and failures, and the comforting belief that individual human lives matter enough to register on a universal scale. Modern astrology succeeds for exactly the same reasons. You walk past a bookstore window displaying dozens of astrology guides, crystal healing manuals, and other systems that promise to decode the hidden patterns controlling your life. The medieval world would recognize every single one of these impulses. We haven't evolved past the need for cosmic meaning. We've just dressed it up in different clothes and called it spirituality instead of science. That evening you sit in your apartment scrolling through social media and notice how many people are blaming Mercury retrograde for their bad days. How many are planning life decisions around lunar phases? How many check compatibility horoscopes before dating someone new? The same cosmic lottery that medieval villagers paid silver coins to participate in is now free, instant, and available 24 hours a day on your phone. The technology changed, the psychology didn't. Medieval people used astrology to make sense of plagues, wars, and famines that killed randomly and without apparent reason. Modern people use astrology to make sense of pandemics, economic crashes, and political chaos that kill randomly and without apparent reason. The stars still don't control human fate, but humans still need to believe someone does. Even if that someone is an imaginary personality we've projected onto chunks of rock floating in space. Medieval astrology worked because it gave people permission to be human, to be afraid, to be uncertain, to be small creatures in a vast universe that doesn't seem designed with their comfort in mind. And sometimes, permission to be human is exactly what we need to survive. The stars aren't listening. They never were. But as long as humans exist, we'll keep talking to them anyway. Because the alternative, accepting that we're truly alone with our hopes, fears, and 3-pound brains trying to make sense of infinity, is too terrifying to contemplate. Medieval people weren't wrong to trust the stars. They were just human. And being human, in any century, means needing something bigger than yourself to believe in, even if you have to invent it. You're sitting in a cramped room above a London tavern, watching the most exclusive club in medieval Europe conduct their monthly meeting. They're not discussing trade routes or military strategies. They're arguing about whether Saturn causes hemorrhoids, and if Venus in retrograde makes women more likely to commit adultery. Welcome to the Guild of Astrologers, where cosmic knowledge meets cutthroat business practices. Master William of Norwich adjusts his expensive silk robes and clears his throat importantly. Gentlemen, we have a problem. Too many charlatans are offering astrological services without proper training. Yesterday, some fool told the bishop's wife that Jupiter in her second house meant she should invest in sheep farming. The room erupts in scandalised muttering. Around the table sit 12 of England's most respected astrologers, men who've spent decades learning to translate cosmic gibberish into profitable wisdom. Their combined knowledge could predict the death of kings or the outcome of wars. Probably. Listen to the scratch of quills on parchment as they record meeting minutes that read like a cross between corporate bylaws and mystical poetry. Smell the expensive imported wine that proves astrology pays better than farming. Feel how the autumn wind rattles diamond-paned windows that cost more than most people see in a lifetime. What did Jupiter in the second house actually indicate? Asks Master Geoffrey of York. consulting a leather-bound book thick as a Bible. Favourable conditions for financial investment, obviously, William replies with the confidence of someone who's never been wrong, because nobody keeps track of his predictions long enough to check. But sheep farming, Jupiter in the second, house clearly indicates investments in maritime ventures, or possibly grain storage. This is medieval astrology's dirty secret. Even the experts made it up as they went along. But they made it up with such authority, such mathematical precision, such scholarly gravitas that people believed every word. Master Hugh of Canterbury waves a hand dismissively. The real problem isn't untrained astrologers. It's too many people learning to read. Common folk are getting hold of our almanacs and trying to interpret them without proper guidance. Dangerous, agrees Master Robert of Winchester. A little astrological knowledge is worse than none at all. Last month some farmer read that Mars was entering his 7th house and decided to divorce his wife. Caused a scandal that reached the Archbishop. Here's what would blow your modern mind. Medieval astrologers had professional standards, licensing requirements, trade secrets, quality control measures. They turned cosmic nonsense into a legitimate profession with guild regulations and apprenticeship programs. The guildmasters spend an hour debating whether to standardize their death prediction methods. Currently, each astrologer uses slightly different calculation systems, leading to embarrassing situations where two experts give the same person different death dates. Master Thomas told Lord Pembroke he'd die in 3 months, reports Master Geoffrey. Master Richard told him 5 months. Now Pembroke doesn't know which funeral to plan. Simple solution, declares Master William. We establish official death calculation protocols, standard planetary tables, uniform interpretation methods, no more conflicting predictions that damage our professional credibility. They vote unanimously to create the Authorized Manual of Mortality Prediction, a guidebook that would standardize how astrologers calculate when people die. Medieval quality control applied to cosmic murder mysteries, but the real business of the evening isn't professional standards, it's market expansion. Master Hugh unrolls a map showing trade routes across Europe. Gentlemen, astrology is booming in France. The Italian city-states are hiring court astrologers at unprecedented salaries. We're missing opportunities because we're thinking too small. What do you propose? Asks Master Robert. Franchise operations. We train local astrologers in our methods, license them to use our reputation, take a percentage of their profits. Think bigger than individual consultations. Think corporate astrology. The concept hangs in the air like incense. Corporate astrology, branded cosmic wisdom, standardized star predictions distributed across international markets. We could offer package deals, suggests Master Geoffrey excitedly. Birth chart, death prediction, and career guidance for one low price. Maybe throw in compatibility readings for their spouses. Master William's eyes gleam like someone who's discovered how to turn lead into gold. Better yet, subscription services, monthly astrological updates delivered directly to noble houses, seasonal death warnings, holiday horoscopes, keep them coming back for more cosmic guidance. This is how medieval astrology evolved from individual fortune-telling into the world's first international consulting industry. These men weren't just predicting the future, they were creating it, one standardized star chart at a time. The meeting concludes with agreements to establish training centers in Paris, Venice, and Prague, to create standardized textbooks for apprentice astrologers, to develop marketing materials that would spread their cosmic brand across Europe. That night, you walk through London streets that smell like smoke and ambition, passing taverns where guild members celebrate their plans to turn the stars into a business empire. Above you, actual stars shine with the same indifferent light they've cast for millennia, unaware they've become products in humanity's first cosmic corporation. Medieval astrology wasn't just superstition. It was capitalism disguised as mysticism. And it worked so well that variations of the same business model are still making money today. You're standing in the shadows of Oxford's theology department, watching the most dangerous debate in medieval academia. What happens when someone with actual mathematical training challenges the entire astrological system? Brother Marcus of Padua spreads astronomical charts across a wooden table scarred by decades of scholarly arguments. Unlike the mystical symbol soup of astrological charts, these show actual planetary positions calculated through geometric observation. Real science about to collide with profitable nonsense. Gentlemen, Marcus announces to an audience of nervous professors and intrigued students, I submit that astrology is not merely inaccurate, it is mathematically impossible. The room goes dead silent. Professor William de Merton, Oxford's most respected astrological scholar, clutches his teaching notes like someone just questioned the existence of God. Which, in medieval terms, Marcus basically did. Listen to the nervous shuffling of feet on rushes that smell like scholarly anxiety. Taste the ink and parchment dust that fills university air like intellectual perfume. Feel how the autumn light streams through windows that have witnessed centuries of debates between faith and reason. Explain yourself, Professor William demands, voice tight with the authority of someone who's built his career on cosmic mathematics. Brother Marcus points to his charts with the precision of someone who's actually observed the heavens instead of just reading books about them. The planets move in predictable orbits governed by natural law, not mystical influence. Mars cannot oppose Jupiter in any way that affects human behaviour, because planets are physical objects, not cosmic personalities. Here's what would shatter your medieval worldview. By 1350, some scholars had figured out that astrology was complete nonsense, not through mystical revelation or religious authority, but through actual observation and mathematical analysis. Marcus continues his demolition of astrological theory with the enthusiasm of someone revealing a massive fraud. Furthermore, the zodiac itself is an arbitrary human construction. The constellation Aries is not a ram. It's scattered stars that happen to appear connected from Earth's perspective. Different cultures see completely different patterns in the same star groups. Professor Williams' face turns the colour of manuscript illumination. This isn't just academic disagreement. This is professional destruction. Brother Marcus, these theories, they undermine centuries of scholarly tradition. The greatest minds of antiquity developed astrological science through careful observation and mathematical calculation. The greatest minds of antiquity, Marcus replies with devastating politeness, were working with incomplete information. They didn't know planets were other worlds. They thought Earth was the centre of creation. They built elaborate theories on foundations that simply aren't true. The student audience leans forward like people watching a public execution. This is medieval academia at its most dangerous, the moment when new knowledge threatens to destroy old certainties. Professor William tries a different approach. Even if planetary influences work differently than we thought, surely you admit that celestial patterns correlate with earthly events. Wars, plagues, the rise and fall of kingdoms. Marcus spreads additional charts showing historical records compared with astronomical data. I've analysed 50 years of major events against planetary positions. No correlation whatsoever. Wars happen regardless of Mars's position. Plagues spread according to weather patterns and trade routes, not lunar phases. Kings die from the same diseases that kill peasants, with no regard for their natal charts. This is the moment medieval astrology began its long, slow death. Not through religious persecution or popular skepticism, but through the boring, relentless application of actual evidence to mystical claims. But Professor William isn't finished. He's built his reputation, his career, his entire worldview on astrological truth. What about the documented cases of accurate predictions? Master Geoffrey predicted King Edward's illness 3 months before symptoms appeared. I investigated that case, Marcus replies, consulting his notes with scholarly thoroughness. Master Geoffrey made 47 predictions about various nobles that year. 44 were completely wrong. 2 were vague enough to fit multiple outcomes. 1 happened to be correct, the mathematical probability of random chance. The room erupts in shocked murmurs. Students who've paid good money to learn astrological science are discovering they've been studying elaborate fiction. Professors who've dedicated their lives to cosmic wisdom are watching their expertise crumble like old parchment. Marcus delivers his final blow with the calm authority of mathematical proof. Astrology persists not because it works, but because it tells people what they want to hear. That their lives have cosmic significance, that chaos has hidden patterns, that someone, somewhere, is paying attention to their individual struggles. And what's wrong with that? Professor William demands desperately. If astrological guidance brings people comfort, helps them make better decisions, gives meaning to their suffering. Nothing, Marcus admits. Except we shouldn't call it science when it's actually therapy. We shouldn't charge premium prices for mathematical calculations that are really just elaborate guesswork. And we shouldn't build important decisions, medical treatments, military strategies, royal policies, on foundations of comforting fiction. That evening, news of the debate spreads through Oxford like plague through overcrowded streets. Some students abandon their astrological studies immediately. Others double down, convinced that Brother Marcus is either a heretic or a fool who doesn't understand cosmic mysteries beyond mathematical measurement. Professor William retires to his chambers and spends the night staring at charts that suddenly look like the elaborate doodles of someone trying very hard to find meaning in randomness. Medieval astrology didn't die from this single debate. It took another 3 centuries for scientific astronomy to completely replace cosmic mysticism. But the crack started here. In university halls where scholars brave enough to question comfortable lies began the slow work of replacing comforting fiction with uncomfortable truth. You're sitting in the counting house of Venice's most successful merchant, watching him plan a trading expedition worth more than a king's ransom based entirely on whether Mercury is feeling cooperative this month. Marco Benedetto spreads his ledgers across tables that gleam like mirrors, surrounded by charts showing both trade routes and planetary positions. This isn't just business planning, it's commercial astrology on a scale that would make modern corporate consultants weep with envy. The Silk Road expedition departs when Mercury stations direct in Gemini, Marco announces to his business partners, pointing to an astrological calendar that looks like someone crossed a spreadsheet with mystical poetry. Not one day earlier, the last merchant who ignored Mercury's retrograde period lost 3 ships and 40,000 florins. The counting house smells like exotic spices, expensive ink, and the metallic tension of men gambling fortunes on cosmic timing. You taste the wine that flows freely when discussing ventures that could either multiply wealth tenfold or bankrupt entire families. Feel how the afternoon light streams through windows that overlook canals where ships wait to carry dreams and nightmares to distant shores. His partner, Giovanni Mocenigo, consults his own astrological notes with the intensity of someone studying military intelligence. What about the monsoon season? Jupiter enters Cancer next month, which governs water and weather patterns. Favourable for sea voyages, Marco replies confidently. Jupiter in Cancer means protective influences for water travel. Our ships will have cosmic escort. Here's what would blow your capitalist mind. Medieval merchants built international trading empires using astrological timing as seriously as modern businesses use market analysis. They didn't just check wind patterns and political conditions. They consulted star charts before making decisions worth millions in today's currency. Marco's trading network stretches from London to Constantinople, from Bruges to Alexandria. Warehouses in 7 cities, ships on 4 different seas, agents and courts from England to Egypt, and every single business decision gets filtered through cosmic calculations that would make a casino owner jealous. The pepper shipment from India, Giovanni continues, arrives when Venus trines with Jupiter in the 2nd house. Exceptional profits guaranteed. Unless pirates attack during the Mars-Saturn square next month, warns Francesco Dandolo. Their security advisor, who takes planetary military intelligence as seriously as conventional spies. Saturn in the 7th house indicates hidden enemies. We should double the armed escorts. This is medieval international commerce operating on cosmic principles. Ship captains received astrological sailing instructions alongside navigation charts. Warehouse managers timed inventory movements according to lunar phases. Trade negotiations waited for favourable planetary alignments like modern businesses wait for favourable exchange rates. Marco produces a thick leather folder containing what he calls competitive astrological intelligence, detailed horoscopes for rival merchants and their likely business strategies based on birth charts, medieval corporate espionage using natal astrology instead of industrial spies. Our main competitor, Alessandro Grimani, has Saturn transiting his 10th house of career and reputation, Marco explains with the satisfaction of someone holding insider information. His business ventures will face unexpected obstacles for the next 6 months. Perfect time to undercut his spice trade in Flanders. Giovanni nods approvingly. What about the new banking regulations in Florence? Should we restructure our loans before Mercury goes retrograde? Already handled. I consulted Master Angelo about the city's financial horoscope. Florence's natal chart shows Jupiter protection for foreign investments through autumn. Our loans are cosmically secured. Medieval merchants didn't just study supply and demand, they studied planetary supply and demand. When Mercury ruled communication and trade, its retrograde periods meant delayed messages and confused negotiations. When Venus governed luxury goods, its favourable aspects indicated high demand for silk and spices. When Mars controlled conflict, its harsh transits warned of wars that could disrupt trade routes. But here's the twist that would make modern economists dizzy. This cosmic market analysis actually worked. Not because planets controlled international commerce, but because forcing medieval merchants to think systematically about timing, risk management and long-term planning made them better businessmen than competitors who made impulsive decisions. The afternoon session concludes with detailed astrological schedules for the next year's trading calendar. Spring departures timed to Venus-Jupiter conjunctions for maximum profit. Summer warehousing during favourable moon phases for inventory protection. Autumn negotiations when Mercury supports clear communication and honest dealing. Gentlemen, Marco announces, raising wine that gleams like liquid gold, to another year of cosmic commerce and planetary profits. That evening you walk through Venice's merchant quarter, past warehouses stuffed with treasures from across the known world, all organised according to astrological principles that turned cosmic nonsense into commercial advantage. Ships in the harbour display flags showing their departure dates calculated by astrologers, not just navigators. Medieval international trade wasn't just about buying low and selling high. It was about buying low when Jupiter was happy and selling high when Venus smiled. Cosmic capitalism that turned star worship into the world's first global economy. You're standing in a London coffee house in 1666, watching the last generation of people who truly believed the stars controlled human fate argue with the first generation who thought such beliefs were quaint superstition. The old world is dying, and the new world isn't sure what to replace it with. Dr. Christopher Wren adjusts his newfangled telescope and points it not at patients' horoscopes, but at actual planets visible through the smoky glass. Gentlemen, I've observed Mars through this instrument for 6 months. It's not red with cosmic anger. It's red because its surface appears to contain iron oxide. It's not a god, it's a world. Master Edmund Thornfield, London's last great astrological physician, clutches his charts like someone holding onto the edge of a crumbling cliff. Dr. Wren, your mechanical philosophy may explain what planets are made of, but it cannot explain why Mars transits consistently correlate with inflammatory diseases. The coffee house buzzes with the intellectual energy of a world in transition. Smell the exotic coffee that's replacing ale as the beverage of scholarly discourse. Taste the tobacco smoke that creates democratic clouds, where lords and merchants debate as equals. Feel how the autumn light streams through windows that frame a city, rebuilding after plague and fire, ready to embrace whatever comes next. This is the moment medieval astrology finally died, not with persecution or prohibition, but with indifference. The generation coming of age in the 1660s had watched London burn, survived plague that killed a third of the population, and witnessed political upheaval that made their parents' cosmic certainties seem childishly naive. The problem with astrology, explains Mr. Samuel Pepys, adjusting his new spectacles with the authority of someone who's seen empires collapse and rebuild, isn't that it's wrong, it's that it's unnecessary. We have mathematics now, scientific method, experimental verification. Why consult the stars when we can consult reality? Master Thornfield makes one last desperate argument for cosmic wisdom. But what about meaning? Purpose? The sense that individual human lives matter in some larger pattern? Mathematics cannot provide that comfort. Then perhaps, suggests Doctor Wren gently, we need new sources of comfort, better medicine that actually heals people, more accurate weather prediction based on barometric pressure instead of lunar phases, political systems that don't depend on royal bloodlines blessed by favourable stars. Here's what would break medieval hearts. The scientific revolution didn't just replace astrological knowledge with better knowledge. It replaced the entire concept of knowledge as personal, meaningful, cosmically significant with knowledge as impersonal, mechanical, indifferently accurate. The coffee house debate continues through the afternoon, touching on topics that would have been unthinkable a century earlier. Mr. Isaac Newton explains how planetary orbits follow mathematical laws that have nothing to do with human affairs. Dr. Robert Hooke describes microscopic worlds invisible to naked eyes, suggesting reality contains layers of complexity that ancient star watchers never imagined. If planets don't control human behaviour, asks Master Thornfield, then what does? Are we simply random collections of matter bouncing around according to mechanical principles? The question hangs in tobacco smoke like incense in a cathedral. This is the existential crisis that replaced astrological certainty. If humans aren't cosmically significant, what are they? Mr. Pepys offers a surprisingly modern answer. Perhaps we're what we choose to make ourselves. Perhaps meaning isn't something we discover in star patterns, but something we create through our decisions, relationships, and contributions to human knowledge. Dr. Wren nods thoughtfully. The stars are still beautiful, still worthy of study and wonder, but now we can appreciate them for what they actually are, distant suns with their own worlds, not cosmic fortune-tellers concerned with terrestrial politics. As evening falls, the coffeehouse crowd disperses into London streets that sparkle with new possibilities. Some still check almanacs out of habit, but fewer believe planetary positions will determine their fate. The younger generation carries slide rules instead of astrological charts, consults barometers instead of horoscopes. Master Thornfield walks home alone, past shops selling telescopes instead of astrolabes, newspapers instead of astrological predictions. His world of cosmic meaning has been replaced by a world of mechanical precision, and he's not sure the trade was worth it. That night he looks up at stars that still shine with ancient light but no longer speak with divine authority. They're beautiful, distant, silent. For the first time in human history, the heavens don't care about human affairs, and humans are learning to live without cosmic approval. Medieval astrology didn't just predict the future. It provided the comforting illusion that the future was predictable, meaningful, personally significant. When that illusion died, humanity had to learn how to find meaning in a universe that offers none automatically. The stars kept shining, but the conversation between heaven and earth had finally ended. You're scrolling through Instagram in 2024, watching a 23-year-old influencer with purple hair explain why Mercury retrograde is responsible for her failed relationship, her delayed Amazon package, and her inability to find matching socks. 600 years later, and humanity is still having the same conversation with the stars. Mercury retrograde is literally ruining my life, she announces to 847,000 followers who nod along in the comments section. Don't make any major decisions until it goes direct on the 15th. The universe is basically telling us to slow down and reflect. The irony would make medieval astrologers weep with laughter. We've got technology that would seem like magic to people from 1347, and we're still blaming planets for our personal problems. Listen to the gentle hum of air conditioning that keeps you comfortable in ways medieval kings could never imagine. Smell the synthetic vanilla candle that burns without risk of burning down your house. Feel the smartphone in your hand that connects you instantly to more information than the greatest medieval scholars saw in their lifetimes. Yet, here you are, checking your horoscope app the same way Brother Matthias consulted his charts in that smoke-filled monastery cell. Your phone buzzes with a notification from Cosmic Wisdom Daily. Mars enters Scorpio today. Time for emotional transformation and releasing toxic relationships. Your ruling planet suggests major changes ahead. The language has changed, but the psychology hasn't. Medieval people needed cosmic permission to make difficult life decisions. Modern people need cosmic permission to make difficult life decisions. We've just replaced monks with algorithms and parchment with push notifications. You switch to TikTok and watch a dozen videos about Saturn return, the astrological concept that your life falls apart every 29 years, when Saturn completes its orbit and returns to the position it occupied when you were born. Comments flood in from people in their late 20s blaming their quarter-life crises on cosmic timing, rather than the normal challenges of adult development. Saturn return is so real, types at Moonchild94. I lost my job, broke up with my boyfriend, and moved back home with my parents. It's like the universe is forcing me to rebuild my entire life. Medieval astrologers would recognize this instantly. People attributing natural life transitions to planetary influences because it feels better than accepting responsibility for their choices or admitting that chaos sometimes happens without cosmic supervision. But here's what's different about modern astrology. It's democratized, commercialized, and psychologized in ways that would blow medieval minds. You open another app, CoStar, that generates personalized daily horoscopes based on your exact birth time and location. Medieval nobles paid fortunes for this level of astrological customization. Now it's free, instant, and available to anyone with a smartphone. The app cheerfully informs you that today is a good day for creative projects but a bad day for financial decisions. It doesn't explain why Jupiter's position affects your bank account, because modern astrology has abandoned the pretense of scientific explanation. It's pure psychology dressed up in cosmic language. Your social media feed fills with astrology memes that would confuse medieval astrologers but make perfect sense to therapy culture. Venus in retrograde has me questioning all my relationships. My Mercury is in Sagittarius, which explains why I always speak without thinking. Don't mind me, just having a Pluto square Neptune existential crisis. Modern astrology isn't about predicting death or timing battles. It's about explaining personality traits and justifying emotional responses. We've turned cosmic forces into cosmic therapists, who always validate our feelings and never challenge our behaviour. You scroll past advertisements for astrology readings delivered via video chat, astrology-based dating apps that match people by zodiac compatibility, astrology subscription boxes that deliver crystals and incense aligned with your birth chart. Medieval astrology was a cottage industry. Modern astrology is a billion-dollar business that makes Master Jeffrey's travelling death predictions look like a lemonade stand. The comment section of every astrology post reads like a medieval village gathering to discuss their almanac predictions. Mercury retrograde explains why my car broke down. Full moon in Leo has me feeling so dramatic. Anyone else's anxiety spiking during this Mars-Pluto opposition? Same human needs, same cosmic explanations, same comfort in believing that chaos has hidden patterns and individual lives have universal significance. You check your horoscope one more time before bed, not because you believe Venus actually controls your love life, but because you want someone, even an imaginary planetary personality, to care about your personal struggles. Medieval people consulted astrologers for exactly the same reason. The stars haven't changed position. Human psychology hasn't evolved. We're still the same species that invented astrology in the first place. Clever enough to recognize patterns, social enough to need meaning, anxious enough to want cosmic guidance, and human enough to prefer comforting lies over uncomfortable truths. Medieval astrology promised that death was predictable, fate was written in the stars, and individual human lives mattered enough to register on a cosmic scale. Modern astrology promises that personality is predetermined, relationships are governed by cosmic compatibility, and individual human feelings matter enough to influence planetary movements. Both versions are equally false. Both versions are equally appealing. Both versions serve the same psychological function, making random humans feel like they're part of something bigger, more meaningful, more personally significant than the indifferent universe actually provides. You're sitting in the back row of Europe's first astrology university, watching nervous students practice calculating death dates on volunteer patients who may not survive their educational experience. This is medieval higher education at its most terrifying, learning cosmic mathematics that could accidentally kill people if you carry the one wrong. Master Aldrich of Bologna adjusts his star-covered robes and addresses the class with the authority of someone who's been wrong about planetary influences for 30 years, but never admits it. Today we learn to cast nativity charts for newborn infants. Remember, one miscalculation, and you might condemn an innocent child to a life of cosmic misfortune. The lecture hall smells like unwashed wool, expensive ink, and the nervous sweat of young men who've paid their families' life savings to learn how to read fortunes in mathematical gibberish. Listen to the scratch of 50 quills taking notes that will determine other people's fates. Taste the smoke from oil lamps that burn through the night as students memorize planetary tables. Feel how the stone benches press against spines bent over calculations that turn human lives into cosmic equations. Here's what would blow your modern mind. Medieval astrology required genuine mathematical skill. Students spent years memorizing astronomical tables, learning geometric calculations, mastering the trigonometry needed to track planetary positions across the celestial sphere. It wasn't just mystical nonsense. It was mystical nonsense that demanded rigorous academic training. Young Geoffrey of Canterbury raises a trembling hand. Master Aldrich, what if we calculate incorrectly? What if we tell someone their child will die young when actually the stars promise long life? The Master's laugh sounds like. Sounds parchment tearing. Then you face the Guild's disciplinary committee, which has creative punishments for professional incompetence. Last year, Master Benedict miscalculated a royal birth chart and spent 6 months predicting weather patterns for pig farmers. The students shudder collectively. Medieval astrology wasn't just about cosmic wisdom. It was about professional liability insurance in a world where wrong predictions could end careers, reputations, or actual lives. Master Aldrich spreads a massive chart showing the celestial anatomy, a naked human figure covered in astrological symbols that assigns different body parts to different planets. Mars governs the head and face, Venus controls the kidneys and reproductive organs, Saturn rules the spleen and bones. Your medical predictions must account for planetary positions affecting each anatomical region. This is medieval medical school teaching future doctors that human health depends on whether Jupiter is having a good day. Students take detailed notes about which planets cause which diseases, when to perform surgery based on lunar phases, how to time bloodletting according to Mars transits. The afternoon practical session involves real patients, desperate villagers who've paid silver coins for student consultations that might cure them or kill them faster than whatever brought them here. Medieval medical education using live human guinea pigs for cosmic experiments. Geoffrey draws his first real patient, a middle-aged woman with persistent headaches that make her vomit blood. He spreads his charts, consults his planetary tables, calculates her birth horoscope with mathematical precision that would impress modern astronomers. Your natal Mars squares, Saturn in the 6th house of health, he announces with the confidence of someone who learned this yesterday. The headaches come from cosmic conflict between planetary forces governing your blood and skull. Treatment requires herbs gathered when Mars is waning and administered only during hours ruled by beneficial Venus. The woman nods gratefully, paying 3 silver coins for advice based on planetary positions that have nothing to do with the brain tumour that's actually killing her. Medieval healthcare, where mathematical precision met medical ignorance and created elaborate systems of cosmic malpractice. But here's the weird part. Sometimes it worked. Not because planets controlled human health, but because forcing medieval doctors to consider timing, dosage, and systematic observation made them slightly better at not accidentally killing patients through random bloodletting and toxic medications. Evening study sessions continue past midnight, with students memorizing planetary rulerships, house meanings, aspect interpretations. They're learning to speak a language that turns human suffering into mathematical problems with cosmic solutions. Tomorrow's professional astrologers cramming for exams that will determine whether they join the intellectual elite or end up reading palms at village fairs. Master Aldrich concludes the day's instruction with words that echo through centuries. Remember, students, we are not fortune tellers or entertainers. We are physicians of the soul, mathematicians of destiny, interpreters of divine will written in celestial motion. People trust us with their deepest fears and highest hopes. Do not take this responsibility lightly. The irony would make Hippocrates weep. Medieval medical education that combined rigorous mathematical training with complete nonsense about planetary health influences, creating doctors who could calculate orbital mechanics, but thought Saturn caused constipation. You're standing outside the Cathedral of Notre Dame, watching the most elaborate matchmaking system in human history. Medieval arranged marriages determined by cosmic compatibility calculations that make modern dating apps look like amateur hour. Lady Isabel de Montfort clutches a leather folder containing detailed astrological analysis of 12 potential husbands, complete with compatibility scores based on planetary positions at their birth times. This isn't romance, it's strategic cosmic pairing designed to produce heirs, secure alliances, and avoid accidentally marrying someone whose stars might kill you in your sleep. Sir Edmund of Yorkshire shows excellent Venus-Jupiter compatibility, explains Master Thomas the Court Astrologer, pointing to charts that look like battle plans drawn by someone obsessed with geometry. His natal sun trines your moon, indicating harmony in marriage and fertility in childbearing. The morning air tastes like expensive perfume and political ambition. Smell the incense burning in dozens of portable braziers that create mystical atmosphere for cosmic matchmaking. Feel how silk rustles against stone as nobles arrange their children's futures based on mathematical calculations about planetary romance. Here's what would break your modern romantic heart. Medieval marriage contracts included detailed astrological clauses. Families hired competing astrologers to verify cosmic compatibility before finalising betrothals. If planetary analysis suggested incompatibility, engagements could be cancelled regardless of personal feelings or political advantages. Lady Isabel studies the marriage charts with the intensity of someone buying horses that might trample her to death. What about Sir Geoffrey of Cornwall? His family owns more land and has stronger military alliances. Master Thomas shakes his head gravely. Astrologically disastrous. His Mars opposes your Venus. Conflict in matters of love and childbearing. Their natal moons square each other. Emotional incompatibility leading to lifelong unhappiness. Worse, his Saturn conjuncts your 5th house. Difficulties producing male heirs. Medieval matchmaking wasn't just about dowries and bloodlines. It was about cosmic chemistry calculated through astronomical mathematics. Families spent fortunes on astrological consultations that determined which combinations of noble children would create cosmically blessed marriages versus astrologically cursed disasters. The marriage market operates like a stock exchange where human lives are commodities traded based on planetary portfolios. Astrologers maintain detailed files on every eligible noble, tracking their birth charts, family horoscopes, genetic astrological profiles that predict everything from fertility to political success to likelihood of death by poisoning. Tell me about the Flemish Count's son, Lady Isabel requests, examining a portrait painted to emphasise the young man's astrologically favourable features: strong jaw, Mars in Leo, intelligent eyes, Mercury in Gemini, noble bearing, Sun in the 10th house. Master Thomas consults his most confidential records. Astrological intelligence gathered through international networks of court astrologers who share cosmic gossip like medieval spies trading state secrets. Excellent breeding potential. His family chart shows 7 generations of astrologically compatible marriages producing healthy heirs who lived past age 30. This is medieval genetics explained through cosmic inheritance, the belief that astrological traits pass from parents to children like eye colour or hereditary diseases. Families analyse generational horoscopes to predict whether marriage alliances would produce cosmically blessed offspring or astrologically cursed lineages. But here's the disturbing twist. These cosmic compatibility calculations sometimes included death predictions for potential spouses. Astrologers would calculate how long each marriage candidate might live, whether they die in childbirth, if their stars indicated early widowhood. Sir Robert of Devon shows strong compatibility markers, Master Thomas notes carefully, but his chart suggests he may not survive his 30th year. Excellent for producing heirs quickly, problematic for long-term companionship. Lady Isabel's mother joins the consultation, bringing additional astrological concerns that turn marriage planning into cosmic risk management. What about the family curse? 3 generations of women in our bloodline died in childbirth. Do any of these matches show planetary protection against maternal mortality? Medieval marriage wasn't just personal commitment, it was cosmic Russian roulette, where wrong astrological choices could doom entire family lines to generational suffering. Astrologers calculated not just compatibility between individuals, but compatibility between family horoscopes, bloodline charts, hereditary planetary influences. The afternoon session involves interviewing actual marriage candidates whose personalities have been pre-screened through astrological analysis. Young nobles coached by astrologers on how to emphasise their cosmically favourable traits while concealing planetary weaknesses that might discourage potential matches. Sir Edmund arrives precisely at the astrologically calculated optimal time, wearing colours that harmonise with his natal Venus placement. His conversation topics have been selected to demonstrate Mercury-Jupiter intelligence, while avoiding Mars-Saturn topics that might reveal aggressive or melancholic temperament. Lady Isabel, he says with practised cosmic charm, I understand our birth charts show exceptional Venus compatibility. Perhaps we might discuss our mutual appreciation for music and poetry, which our astrologers indicate will bring harmony to married life. Medieval courtship, where romantic conversations followed astrological scripts designed to confirm cosmic compatibility predictions. Every gesture, word, and interaction filtered through planetary analysis that turned human attraction into mathematical validation of star charts. That evening, Lady Isabel reviews her options like a general planning military campaigns. 12 potential husbands, each with detailed astrological profiles, predicting everything from sexual compatibility to likelihood of producing male heirs, to probability of becoming a widow before age 25. Medieval marriage combined the romance of a business merger with the personal intimacy of a livestock breeding program, all justified through cosmic mathematics that turned human love into planetary calculations. You're standing in the delivery chamber of a medieval castle, watching an astrologer calculate a newborn's entire life story before the umbilical cord is even cut. The baby's first breath determines not just when they'll die, but how they'll live, who they'll become, and what cosmic forces will control their destiny for the next 70 years. Master Hugh of Winchester adjusts his astrolabe with the precision of someone performing surgery, capturing the exact moment of birth that will determine this infant's astrological fate. Born at 14 minutes past the 3rd hour after midnight, with Mars rising in Scorpio and the moon waxing in Taurus, he announces like someone reading a death sentence written in starlight. The chamber smells like blood, birthing herbs, and the smoky intensity of candles that have burned through the night vigil of cosmic timing. Listen to the scratch of quill on parchment as the astrologer records planetary positions that will follow this child from cradle to grave. Taste the metallic tension of a moment when human life intersects with cosmic mathematics. Feel how the stone walls seem to press closer, as if the entire castle is holding its breath while destiny gets calculated. Here's what would shatter your modern parenting philosophy. Medieval children didn't choose their own personalities, career paths, or life destinies. Everything was predetermined by planetary positions at the moment of birth, calculated with mathematical precision that turned newborns into cosmic prisoners of astrological fate. The baby's mother, Lady Margaret, watches anxiously as Master Hugh constructs her daughter's natal chart. Circles within circles, symbols that look like alphabet soup having an identity crisis. What do the stars reveal about her future, Master Hugh? The astrologer's face grows solemn as he completes his calculations. The child is born under challenging aspects. Saturn opposes her natal sun, a life marked by obstacles and delays. Mars squares her moon, difficulties with emotional expression and potential for violent temperament. Mercury retrograde in her 3rd house, problems with communication and early learning. Medieval parenting, receiving your newborn's psychological profile, learning disabilities diagnosis, and personality prediction all within hours of birth, based on which planets happened to be visible when the baby decided to stop being comfortable inside the womb. But the astrological birth analysis goes deeper than personality prediction. Master Yu continues reading cosmic fate like someone reciting a grocery list of predetermined doom. Her Venus placement suggests 3 marriages, the first ending in widowhood before age 25. Jupiter in her 6th house indicates health challenges related to the liver and digestive system. The North Node in her 8th house. He stops, looking uncomfortable. What does the North Node in the 8th house indicate? Lady Margaret demands. Death through transformation. Possibly death in childbirth, following the family pattern shown in generational charts. This is medieval fortune-telling at its most psychologically damaging, telling parents their newborn daughter will probably die young in the same way her grandmother and great-grandmother died, based on mathematical calculations about planetary positions that have nothing to do with genetics, medical care, or personal choices. The baby, meanwhile, sleeps peacefully in cosmic ignorance of the astrological prison being constructed around her future. She doesn't know that Mars in Scorpio means she'll have anger management issues. She doesn't know that Mercury retrograde means she'll struggle with reading and writing. She doesn't know that Saturn opposing her sun means she'll spend her life fighting against obstacles that exist mainly in her astrologer's imagination. Master Hugh produces additional charts showing the child's progressions. how her natal horoscope will evolve as she ages, creating a year-by-year prediction of her entire life story. At age 7, progressed Mars will conjunct her natal Venus, the awakening of premature romantic interest that must be carefully controlled. At age 14, her progressed Sun squares natal Saturn, a period of rebellion against authority that could damage her marriage prospects. Medieval child psychology, believing 7-year-olds have premature romantic interest because planets told you so, and planning to control teenage rebellion before the teenager is old enough to walk, properly. But here's the truly disturbing part. These astrological predictions often became self-fulfilling prophecies that shaped how medieval children were raised, educated and treated by their families. If the stars said a child would be violent, parents would be more likely to punish aggressive behaviour harshly, potentially creating the very violence they feared. If astrology predicted learning difficulties, families might provide less education, ensuring the child struggled academically. Lady Margaret requests additional astrological services that turn child-rearing into cosmic micromanagement. When should we begin her education? What subjects will her planetary influences favour? How do we protect her from the challenging aspects you've identified? Master Hugh consults elaborate tables showing astrologically favourable timing for every aspect of childhood development. Begin formal education when Jupiter transits her third house of learning, approximately age 6 years and 4 months. Focus on subjects ruled by her strong Mercury placement, languages and mathematics. Avoid musical instruction during Mars transits, as her chart shows potential for violent reactions to artistic criticism. Medieval parenting plans based on planetary positions rather than observing what the actual child enjoys shows aptitude for or demonstrates interest in learning. Cosmic child development that turns individual human potential into astrological predestination. The consultation concludes with Master Hugh, providing a complete astrological child-rearing manual, optimal times for weaning, when the moon is waxing in beneficial signs, ideal ages for introducing solid foods, based on digestive planets, recommended marriage timing, when Venus aspects support romantic compatibility, and detailed predictions for every major life transition, until the child reaches old age or dies young as her 8th house placement suggests. That evening, you walk through castle corridors where noble children sleep in bed surrounded by astrological charts that map their predetermined futures. Each child a cosmic prisoner of planetary mathematics calculated before they were old enough to know their own names. Medieval astrology didn't just predict children's futures, it imprisoned them in astrological expectations that often became the very limitations their families feared. The stars didn't control these children's destinies, but believing the stars controlled their destinies absolutely did. You're standing in what might be Europe's most disturbing entrepreneurial venture, a medieval death prediction franchise that's turned mortality forecasting into a profitable business model with international expansion plans and standardized customer service protocols. Master Edmund the Deathseer, his actual professional title, has established Europe's first chain of astrological mortality consultants, with franchise locations in 12 cities and trained representatives who can calculate your personal expiration date for the low price of 5 silver coins. Think medieval McDonald's, but instead of burgers, they're serving cosmic death sentences with a smile. The London headquarters operates with the efficiency of someone who's industrialised human anxiety about mortality. Listen to the constant scratch of quills calculating death dates for a steady stream of customers who line up like people buying bread, except they're purchasing mathematical proof of when they'll stop breathing. Smell the expensive ink used for death certificates that cost more than wedding invitations. Feel how the oak floors creak under the weight of people walking toward tables where their cosmic fate will be calculated with commercial precision. "Next customer," calls Master Edmund with the cheerful authority of someone who's made a fortune telling people when they're going to die. A nervous merchant approaches, clutching coins that represent his entire savings. "I want to know my death date, Master Edmund. My wife is pregnant, and I need to plan my estate accordingly." Here's what would make modern insurance companies weep with envy. Master Edmund has created actuarial tables based on astrological data, calculating life expectancy predictions that he sells to merchants, nobles, and anyone else willing to pay premium prices for cosmic mortality consulting. Master Edmund spreads his instruments with the showmanship of someone who's perfected the theatrical presentation of mathematical doom. Astrolabe, ephemeris tables, calculation wheels, and his secret weapon, the death clock, a specialised astrological computer that can calculate mortality timing with unprecedented accuracy. Date and exact time of birth, Master Edmund asks, already sketching planetary positions with practised efficiency. March 15th, 1312, just before dawn prayers, the merchant replies, voice steady despite hands that shake like autumn leaves in a storm. The calculation process has been streamlined into a 15-minute consultation that maximises customer turnover while maintaining the illusion of personalised cosmic analysis. Master Edmund's apprentices handle preliminary chart construction, leaving him free to deliver death predictions with dramatic authority that justifies premium pricing. Saturn transits your 8th house of death in 18 months, Master Edmund announces with the clinical detachment of someone reading weather forecasts. Combined with Mars opposing your natal sun, this creates a mortality window between your 43rd and 44th birthdays. I calculate your death date as sometime during the winter of 1356. The merchant staggers backward as if physically struck. That's only 14 years from now. I thought I'd live to see my children grown. The stars do not lie, Master Edmund replies with practised sympathy. But knowing your fate allows proper preparation. For an additional 2 silver coins, I can provide our premium estate planning service, astrological guidance for distributing wealth according to cosmic timing that ensures your heirs receive maximum benefit from your death. Medieval death consulting, where mortality predictions come with upselling opportunities that turn cosmic doom into additional revenue streams. Master Edmund has identified that people who've just learned their death dates are highly motivated customers for follow-up services. The premium package includes detailed analysis of how the customer's death will affect surviving family members, optimal timing for writing wills based on planetary influences, and advanced warning about potential inheritance disputes predicted by astrological family charts. But Master Edmund's real genius lies in franchise expansion that spreads death prediction services across medieval Europe. He's trained a network of licensed astrologers who use standardized calculation methods, ensuring consistent quality control for mortality forecasting, regardless of geographic location. Our York franchise reported excellent profits last quarter, Master Edmund explains to potential investors gathered in his private office. Death predictions show 73% customer satisfaction rates, with 68% of clients purchasing additional services after receiving their initial mortality consultation. Medieval business metrics applied to cosmic death calculation, customer retention rates for people who've been told when they're going to die, profit margins on existential terror, market penetration analysis for mortality consulting services. The investors, wealthy merchants looking to diversify their portfolios, examine Master Edmund's business plan with the analytical intensity of people evaluating any other commercial opportunity. Franchise fees, territorial exclusivity, training requirements, advertising strategies for death prediction services. What about customer complaints? Asks Lord Geoffrey of Winchester, a potential franchise owner who's considering opening death prediction services in the southern counties. Master Edmund produces a leather folder containing testimonials from satisfied customers who credit his accurate death predictions with helping them prepare spiritually, financially, and emotionally for cosmic fate. 91% of our customers report that knowing their death date improved their quality of life by eliminating uncertainty about mortality timing. Medieval customer service applied to selling people their own death sentences, satisfaction surveys about cosmic doom, quality assurance for mortality predictions, customer testimonials from people who appreciated learning exactly when they'd stop existing. But here's the darkest twist in this entrepreneurial nightmare. Master Edmund's death predictions were often accurate enough to generate word-of-mouth marketing that built his business reputation. Not because he could actually read fate in planetary positions, but because his astrological calculations forced customers to confront mortality in ways that often led to self-fulfilling prophecies. Tell someone they'll die in 14 years, and they might become more cautious, more health-conscious, more likely to seek medical attention for problems they might otherwise ignore. Or they might become fatalistic, depressed, more likely to engage in risky behaviour because they believe their fate is predetermined. That evening, Master Edmund reviews his account books showing profits that would make modern corporations envious. Death prediction services generating more revenue than grain trading, wool exports, or any other medieval industry except warfare and tax collection. Medieval capitalism discovering that human anxiety about mortality represents an unlimited market opportunity with built-in repeat customers, because everyone dies eventually, making death prediction a recession-proof business model with guaranteed long-term demand. So the next time you check your horoscope or blame Mercury retrograde for your bad day, remember, you're participating in humanity's oldest conversation. We've been asking the universe to explain itself for thousands of years. We're still waiting for an answer. But the conversation itself, the desperate, hopeful, very human need to believe our lives have cosmic significance, that conversation is the most real thing about us. And maybe that's enough. What do you think? Did medieval people have the right idea about letting the stars guide major life decisions? Or are we better off making choices without cosmic consultation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't blame Mercury retrograde if you can't decide what to say.